On December 13th, 2023, just 48 hours from when I record this right now, Ready or Not will launch from early access into full release in the form of a version 1.0. The developers over at Void have been hard at work with a ton of new updates, and they showed them off in a cinematic trailer that was shown at the Game Awards just a few days ago. And yesterday, they followed up with a brand new version 1.0 devlog. In addition to the devlog, they've teased upcoming updates in a series of devlogs that have been released over the last few weeks. I've consolidated the things that I am most excited about here to share them with you, as well as some minor concerns that I have as we approach 1.0's full release. The thing that I'm probably most excited about is the addition of Commander Mode. Commander Mode is the first stab at a true campaign-style experience in Ready or Not, with key features being permadeath, officer traits, and mental health. You will play the role of the LSPD SWAT team commander, David Judge Beaumont, and you're responsible for recruiting, choosing, planning, managing everything about the SWAT team itself, and actually conducting missions alongside them. I can tell that they've considered deeply the design decisions in the gameplay loop with respect to Commander Mode, and they've added some really important features that I think will improve replayability and improve the experience for folks who choose to play Ready or Not by themselves. When you start a new campaign in Commander Mode, you don't get to just jump into whatever mission you want to play. You begin with an initial mission, you complete it successfully, and you subsequently unlock the next missions. All Commander Mode saves have permadeath enabled by default, so if any of your officers die, they are out. You are pulling somebody from off the bench to replace your deceased officer, and the new guy may not have the same officer traits or skills as the dude who went down. In addition to that, you can enable Iron Man Mode, which means that if you die, your save is automatically deleted and you are starting from scratch. In addition to all of that, the score at the end of each mission actually matters, and whether or not you're successful in the operation, whether or not you accidentally kill civilians, you use too much force, or you fail or successfully accomplish the mission, impacts your officers' morale and their mental health status, because after each operation, they'll be checking in with an embedded mental health detachment to see if they are still fit for duty. And if they experience too much stress, they may not be able to deploy on a mission, they may quit, or worse, which seems kind of ominous. They've talked about Commander Mode a little bit more, and I think it's going to be available when the game launches on the 13th of December. I've included a link down below to the devlog that talks specifically about Commander Mode, but let's move on because there's actually a lot of ground to cover here. They've also announced the addition of some new rifles. Specifically, they've added the MCX rifle, the LVAR rifle, which is a knockoff of the low visibility assault weapon, which is basically a shorty MCX that is suppressed and runs 300 blackout from SIG as well. And that's probably going to be my go-to just looking at this list. They've added the F90 rifle, a Supernova shotgun, a UMP9 submachine gun, a 1911, a new less lethal launcher, and they've redone weapon models for the 870 MCS breaching shotgun, which is great news, the UMP45 subgun, and the M45 A1 pistol, as well as the MPX SMG. Maybe the biggest news overall is the complete rework they have done to friendly AI. And I have a confession here. I've been covering Ready or Not since it was an idea back in like 2019, 2020, and I've been playing it for a long freaking time at this point. I have never played it solo because what I saw from the friendly AI just didn't meet my requirements, and I always have a crew to run with. However, this AI overhaul has me thinking I'm going to run a solo campaign through this game because it looks straight up phenomenal. They've completely reworked movement and positioning for friendly AI. Now as they move, they're going to cover, areas of threat in all directions. And from the looks of it, it's animated very well. It's extremely smooth and natural. Your officers are going to pull rear security just by default. And you can also now choose different formations, and they've got file, double file, which is basically like a rolling T if you're internal or a column if you're outside. They've got a wedge formation. They've also got a diamond formation. And the team will naturally get out of your way and move around you. They'll also allow you to shoot. So if you go to the high ready and you've got friendlies in your crosshairs, they're going to make a hole for you to deliver rounds if you need to. Not particularly safe, but still helpful, particularly in games when AI are often in the way. Looking at the footage of them navigating stairs, it seems like they're doing a damn good job of it. So you've got guys pulling high security, guys pulling low security, moving very deliberately. And now the AI also pathfind around dead dudes and environmental objects, so they're not trampling over suspects that have been detained or are killed. And they'll also avoid fatal funnels now. So rather than standing directly in the center of an open door or even a closed door, they're going to offset very naturally and essentially hold an angle in a static position until you tell them to actually enter and clear that room. You can still command individuals, and you can pretty easily swap positions from individual to individual and then order individuals to search rooms or stare at a specific direction or whatever you need to do. The Stackup System, which has been a hallmark of their AI, has also been completely reworked, and this might be the most impressive bit out of all of this. And I've never seen a game get friendly AI to successfully enter and clear a room in something that resembles doctrine or something that would be like tactically acceptable. That is until now. They've completely reworked the point placement system, and what they mean by this is there's individual locations on each map that the officers respond to contextually based off how the map designer put those point placements, and it will inform how the officers stack up around any given room. You can choose to either split stack or go heavy left or heavy right, and if you don't choose either one of those, it'll just default to whichever one is safer, and the officers will avoid the fatal funnel. So if you've got dudes scattered on either side of a door, you tell them to stack up on the door, they're going to automatically go into a split stack so that they don't have to walk into a fatal funnel. If you're all on one side of the door, they'll just default to stacking into a heavy stack on that side. But you're going to have to look at the hinge, you're going to have to look at the door opening, where the handle's located, to make a decision about which stack makes the most sense, and you can swap between it all on the fly. There's a ton more options when it comes to breaching as well. You can breach with a RAM. You can trigger an entry with a launcher. You can have AI trigger an entry with a launcher. And you can also leader initiate with handhelds or leader initiate with actual breaching actions yourself. They've also reworked how handhelds are employed by the friendly AI. And I think this is extremely important. It's something that games essentially never get right. So now when you call for a flashbang to come from one of your teammates, they will by default hold security on the door with the number 1 or the number 2 man, and then someone deeper in the stack, so not the number 1 man, will employ that handheld while the number 1 man is providing cover at a logical angle to protect the thrower to the best of their ability, which is just extremely impressive. Equally impressive in my mind is the fact that they have added, call it what you want, panning the doorway, panning the threshold, pieing a center check, or some combination thereof. You now have the option to take a more deliberate approach to an open threshold and order one of your officers to conduct a deliberate pan of that threshold before transitioning to an entry. And I'll go back and talk about some of this movement stuff in a second and give you kind of like my 2 cents from my background on what I think of the actual tactics that are being displayed. So far as the clearing system is concerned in the small unit tactics, they'll naturally not overextend anymore. So, they're going to stay generally in the same room. If there's open space, they will naturally clear that open space, but there's some sort of limit. So if it's too large of an open space and they're going to, be at risk of overextending and spreading you out too much, they will by default hold and wait for a command to continue movement. So far as the actual entry is concerned, if you're in a split stack, all assaulters will default to a path of least resistance entry, whereas if you're in a heavy left or a heavy right, they will by default go for a button hook. They'll also use muzzle awareness, and as other officers or as you cross in front of them, they'll go to a low ready so that they're not pointing their gun at you, which is just a great touch in my mind. And they'll also execute proper doctrine on entry, meaning you'll have, number 1 man go left, number 2 man go right, back and forth, as you would expect. And as they enter and clear that room, they're going to point their gun at threat areas. If there's an open door or a hallway, whatever the case may be, you can expect one of your officers by default to sort that threat and keep a gun on it while still clearing their sector, which is pretty freaking sweet. Shields will always be in the lead during clearance, and now short rooms, rather than committing the entire team, if you open up a closet, turns out, it's a short room that doesn't need the whole team, you're only going to send 2 AI guys in there by default, and that's not a command you have to give. It's just going to happen automatically. And this is just, I'm blown away by the level of detail they've managed to achieve here. Now, one of my concerns here is that with all this rework, I just assumed it would break basically every mod, but the developers are saying that it shouldn't, and that the pathing that I described and the contextual clues and points that help the AI teammates figure out how to stack on doors, that's all data that can be generated when the map is loaded for the very first time. So all of your modded custom maps, hopefully, will still work with friendly AI. I'm sure there will be exceptions. I'm sure this won't be perfect, but the fact that they've considered that and they think it's going to work and they've hopefully, tested it is at least gives me some hope and some optimism in that regard. And then finally, so all this new AI movement, all these new tactics, what do I think of the tactics that are being shown? Frankly, I'm pretty impressed. It's the best that I have ever seen in a game, but there are still some doctrinal questions that I have. What I would say is they have a advisor on the team. I think he's prior law enforcement, probably a prior SWAT guy, definitely knows his shit. And I'm not like disparaging the work he's doing with Void in any way, because they've nailed, all of this to the best video game developer can that doesn't have a bunch of subject matter experts on staff QA/QCing every little detail. The first thing I would say is this whole pan the threshold pie center check concept where you tell the guy to take a more deliberate sweep of the threshold. In real life, whenever someone does that, they almost always are the number one man into the room, because after they have pied that threshold, they have the best situational awareness on everything that is in that room. And they know at that point whether or not it is wiser for them to move along the path of least resistance on entry, or it is wiser for them to perform a button hook, or it is wiser to call a halt and address the room with a handheld or a call out or something completely different. What it also prevents is getting shot by your teammate. So in one of the clips that's shown, it was a perfect demonstration of this. You had the lead man, number one man, pie the threshold, arrive to the left side of the threshold. And then as he arrives at the far side of the threshold, he sends around as you would expect him to, because the dude pieing the threshold has the best situational awareness. He's also the most likely to identify a threat in the room and have a requirement to engage it if there's a threat in that room. So he pies the threshold, sends around a fraction of a second before the two man on the opposite side of the stack goes to make entry. Real world, extremely dangerous. You typically want that guy who's conducting the pie to be the number one man. And the other thing I would say that is that I noticed was on all their entries from a split stack, they're using a zipper technique rather than a dump the left side, dump the right side kind of technique. This is completely unit SOP driven, and whether you're SWAT, law enforcement, military, whatever the case may be, we've all seen it done different ways. I've certainly done it both ways in the past. I think in a video game standpoint, it is easier to animate smoothly if you dump an entire side of a split stack, be it left or right. Dump that entire side into the room first and then dump the entire other side. I think it'll just look better, number one. Number two, I typically preference that way because it's less complicated. You can get into the room a hell of a lot faster. Anytime you're trying to merge traffic during a contested entry, it becomes very difficult to conduct a zipper while getting shot at and trying to squeeze yourself into the correct position in that stack. Well-trained team can do it extremely well. Plenty of teams, go out and train to a high level of proficiency and do that stuff remarkably well under extremely hard circumstances and extremely high stress. But I would say that is not the norm. That's the exception to the rule rather than the rule. And a best practice that I have seen in the past is by emptying one side of the stack and then emptying the other. But that's just personal opinion, not necessarily doctrine. There's technically nothing wrong with what Ready or Not is doing. It's just a preference that I have. And the final thing I would say is while they have nailed down the entry itself, the left, right stuff, what they have not done is specified points of domination, and they have not controlled muzzles during entry. Typically, whether you're in a split stack or a heavy left or a heavy right, number one man on entry, very likely to perform a center check just as the game now allows you to do. And then as soon as his muzzle breaks the threshold, you expect him to collapse into the corner of the room, meaning his muzzle is going to go hard left or hard right based off the direction that he entered, and then begin collapsing towards the center of the room as he moves to his point of domination. Right now, that happens well with the first man and the second man, but the problem is the 3-4 man are doing the exact same thing. You don't have the 3-man coming up and putting his muzzle into the center of the room like you would expect a 3-man to typically do. You don't have the number 4-man coming up and putting his muzzle towards the center of the room as you would typically expect a 4-man to do. Instead, they are putting their guns essentially into the exact same locations as the number 1 and the number 2-man. With respect to the points of domination, that's just a term used to describe the point in the room at which the assaulter will terminate his actual movement. In a typical center-fed room, the one man's going to take 2 walls, meaning he's going to make entry. He's going to move to that first corner, move from that first corner to the second corner in the room, and then he will stop. The number 2 man will make entry, move to the first corner, and then stop. You'll end up having your team arrayed on the walls of the room, generally in the shape of an L, so that everyone has open sectors of fire and can safely engage towards the center of the room in the event that there's threats, and do so without shooting each other. And I saw no evidence that that has occurred so far in Ready or Not. Those are very nitpicky critiques, and the fact that I can even perform those critiques on a video game that has somehow managed to work some magic coding wizardry to accomplish what it appears Ready or Not has accomplished is a testament to how hard they have worked and how far this game has come since I first saw it many years ago. And I am very excited to see what this full release looks like. I'm excited to bring you guys a full-on hardcore permadeath freaking Iron Man mode single player campaign and really put these AI to the test. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. Check the links in the description for the original devlog that's over on the Game Rant channel. And they did a great job of explaining all the things that I cover here and more in much more significant detail. And I hope to see you guys again soon. I'm Controlled Pairs. This has been Ready or Not, and I'll see you in the next one.